In a small, quiet town surrounded by gentle hills and old factories that had seen better days, twin sisters Lily and Rose lived in a tiny apartment with their mother. The building was worn down, its paint peeling and its windows cracked, but it was home. Life wasn't easy for the family. Their father had passed away years ago, leaving behind memories and an empty space that no one could fill. Since then, their mother worked tirelessly, taking whatever jobs she could find, cleaning, houses, babysitting, or helping at the local grocery store. But it was never enough to make ends meet. Every day felt like a struggle. There were bills to pay, clothes to mend, and mouths to feed. Food was always scarce, and the girls often went to bed with growling stomachs. But despite their hardships, Lily and Rose shared a bond that kept them strong. They laughed together, dreamed together, and faced each challenge side by side. Even when life seemed unfair, they found joy in the little things. A butterfly fluttering past their window, a song playing on the radio, or the warmth of sunlight streaming through the cracks in the walls. One chilly afternoon, as the twins walked home from school, their backpacks heavy with books and their feet dragging with exhaustion, they noticed something unusual. The air smelled faintly of bread and cheese, reminding them how hungry they were. When they reached their apartment, they opened the fridge with hopeful eyes, only to find it almost completely empty. All that remained was a single sandwich wrapped in plastic wrap. It was nothing fancy, just 2 slices of white bread with a thin layer of cheese and a smear of mustard. But to the girls, it looked like treasure. Lily picked up the sandwich and held it carefully, as if it might disappear if she let go. "We should split it," she said, looking at her sister. Rose nodded, though her stomach growled loudly in protest. They sat down on the cracked concrete steps outside their building, ready to divide the precious meal into equal halves. But just as Lily began unwrapping the sandwich, a figure caught her eye. An old man shuffled slowly along the sidewalk, his shoulders hunched and his hands stuffed deep into the pockets of a threadbare coat. His face was lined with wrinkles, and his hair was streaked with gray. He carried a tattered backpack slung over one shoulder, and his shoes were so worn that holes peeked through the toes. Despite his appearance, there was a quiet dignity about him, as if he refused to let his circumstances break his spirit. The man glanced toward the girls briefly before lowering his gaze, clearly embarrassed to ask for help. He hesitated for a moment, then continued walking, his footsteps slow and deliberate. Something about him tugged at Lily's heartstrings. She turned to Rose and whispered, "Do you think he's hungry?" Rose shrugged, unsure what to say. "Probably," she replied softly. "But we're hungry too." Lily looked at the sandwich in her hand, then back at the man. Her mind raced with thoughts. They were used to going without food, but this stranger looked like he hadn't eaten in days. She bit her lip, weighing her options. Finally, she made up her mind. Standing up, she called out to the man, "Excuse me?" The man stopped in his tracks and turned around, surprise flickering across his weathered face. "Yes?" he asked, his voice rough but kind. Lily stepped forward, holding out the sandwich. "Here," she said, her voice steady despite the knot of hunger twisting in her stomach. "You can have this." The man stared at her, disbelief written all over his face. For a moment, he didn't move, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then slowly he approached and took the sandwich from her hands. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "You don't have to do this." "We'll be okay," Lily assured him, forcing a smile even though her stomach felt hollow. "Really?" The man's eyes filled with tears, and he nodded gratefully. "Thank you," he murmured, clutching the sandwich tightly. "God bless you both." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. Rose watched him go, her brow furrowed. "Do you think he'll be okay?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. "I hope so," Lily replied, sitting back down beside her sister. "At least we did something good today." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the street, the girls sat in silence. their stomachs rumbling louder than ever. Sharing their last sandwich hadn't solved their problems, it hadn't put food on the table or paid the rent, but it had given them a sense of peace. In a world where everything felt uncertain, they had chosen kindness, and that was something no one could take away from them. Little did they know, their simple act of generosity would set off a chain of events that would change their lives forever. The next morning dawned bright and clear, but the twins' apartment remained dimly lit. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the thin curtains, casting faint shadows on the worn-out furniture. Lily and Rose woke up groggily, their stomachs still, empty from the night before. They hadn't eaten since giving away their last sandwich, and the gnawing hunger was hard to ignore. Still, neither of them complained. Instead, they got ready for school in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. As they stepped outside, the cool morning air brushed against their faces. The streets were quiet, save for the distant hum of cars passing by and the chirping of birds nesting in nearby trees. The twins walked side by side, their backpacks slung over their shoulders, heading toward the park that marked the halfway point to their school. It was a route they took every day, familiar and predictable. But today, something felt different. When they reached the park, they saw him, the same homeless man they had shared their sandwich with the day before. He was sitting on a wooden bench near the playground, his tattered coat replaced with slightly cleaner clothes. His face, though still lined with age and hardship, seemed less weary than it had been the previous afternoon. He looked up as the twins approached, recognition flickering in his eyes. For a moment, no one spoke. The man hesitated, then stood, up slowly, clutching something small in his hand. He shuffled closer to the girls, his movements cautious but deliberate. "You two," he said, his voice hoarse but gentle. "I wanted to thank you again." Lily and Rose exchanged a glance, unsure what to say. They hadn't expected to see him again, let alone receive gratitude. "It's okay," Lily finally replied, her voice soft. "We didn't do anything special." The man shook his head firmly. "No, you don't understand. What you did, it meant more than you know." He paused, then held out his hand. In it was a crumpled business card, its edges frayed and its surface smudged. "Take this," he said. "It's all I can give you for now." Rose reached out hesitantly and took the card. She turned it over in her hands, examining it closely. The text was simple: Ezekiel Grant, private investigator, followed by a phone number and an address scrawled in faded ink. The twins looked at each other, confusion written across their faces. A private investigator? What did that have to do with them? Before they could ask any questions, the man gave them a small, knowing smile. "Don't lose it," he said cryptically. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of early risers making their way through the park. The rest of the walk to school passed in a blur. Both girls were too preoccupied with the mysterious card to focus on anything else. Who was this Ezekiel Grant? And why had the homeless man given them his contact information? They debated silently, their minds racing with possibilities. By the time they reached the school gates, they had come to one conclusion. They needed to show the card to their mother. When they got home that evening, they found their mom sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through a pile of bills. Her face was drawn with worry, and she barely looked up when the girls entered. "Hey, Mom," Lily began, holding out the card. "We need to talk to you about something." Their mother glanced at the card, her brow furrowing. "What's this?" she asked, taking it from Lily's hand. She read it aloud, her voice tinged with skepticism. "Ezekiel Grant, private investigator? Where did you get this?" The twins explained everything, their encounter with the homeless man, the sandwich, and how he had given them the card that morning. Their mother listened intently, her expression shifting between disbelief and curiosity. When they finished, she sighed deeply, rubbing her temples. "Girls, this sounds strange," she admitted, "but maybe it's worth looking into. We don't have much to lose." Over the next few days, the card became a topic of conversation in the household. The twins kept it safe, tucked inside a notebook where it wouldn't get lost. Their mother tried calling the number several times, but no one answered. Each unanswered call left them feeling more uncertain, wondering if the whole thing was just a hoax. Still, there was something about the man's earnestness that lingered in their minds. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a dead end. On the third day, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the twins sat on the steps outside their building, staring at the card once more. "Do you think we'll ever hear back?" Rose asked, breaking the silence. "I don't know," Lily replied, her voice tinged with doubt. "But even if we don't, I'm glad we helped him. That's what matters, right?" Rose nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Little did they know their lives were about to change in ways they could never have imagined. Somewhere out there, unseen forces were already in motion, sparked by a single act of kindness, and soon those forces would find their way to the twins' doorstep. 3 days had passed since the twins last saw the homeless man, and life in their small apartment continued much as it always did, quiet, predictable, and tinged with the constant hum of worry. Their mother still worked long hours, coming home, exhausted but determined to provide for her family. Lily and Rose went to school, came back, and helped around the house as best they could. The mysterious business card from Ezekiel Grant remained tucked safely inside a notebook on the kitchen counter, untouched but not forgotten. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and gold, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. Most people were indoors, settling down for the night. The twins were sitting on the cracked concrete steps outside their building, talking softly about their day. They often spent evenings like this watching the world go by while their mother prepared dinner, or tried to stretch the meager ingredients she had into something edible. Suddenly, the sound of engines broke the calm. 3 sleek black SUVs turned onto their street, their polished exteriors gleaming under the dim glow of the streetlights. The vehicles moved slowly, almost deliberately, drawing curious glances from neighbors who peeked out of their windows. In a town where most people drove old, beat-up cars or walked everywhere, these shiny, imposing vehicles stood out like sore thumbs. The twins exchanged puzzled looks. "What's going on?" Rose whispered, her eyes wide with surprise. "I don't know," Lily replied, her voice equally hushed. She felt a strange mix of excitement and unease bubbling in her chest. Something about the arrival of the SUVs felt important. The convoy stopped directly in front of their building. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in time. Then, 2 men stepped out of the lead vehicle. Both wore sharp suits that looked out of place in the rundown neighborhood. One of them carried a briefcase while the other held a clipboard. They scanned the area briefly before walking toward the entrance of the building. Lily and Rose scrambled to their feet, their hearts pounding. Who were these men? And why were they here? Before they could move, their mother appeared at the door, her face pale and drawn. "Girls, come inside," she said quickly, ushering them into the apartment. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of nervousness to it that the twins hadn't heard before. Moments later, a firm knock echoed through the small space. The twins' mother hesitated, then opened the door cautiously. Standing on the other side were the 2 men in suits, their expressions polite but unreadable. "Good evening, ma'am," one of them said, his tone smooth and professional. "We're looking for Lily and Rose." The twins froze, their stomachs tightening with apprehension. What did these strangers want with them? Their mother stepped forward protectively, her arms crossed over her chest. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the anxiety etched on her face. "What do you want with my daughters?" The man smiled reassuringly. "Please don't be alarmed. We mean no harm. My name is Mr. Carter, and this is my colleague, Mr. Hayes. We represent a philanthropist who wishes to remain anonymous. Your daughters have done something remarkable, and we're here to express our gratitude." The words hung in the air, heavy and surreal. A philanthropist? Gratitude? The twins exchanged bewildered glances, unsure what to make of the situation. Their mother frowned, clearly skeptical. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. What exactly are you talking about?" Mr. Carter nodded, understanding her confusion. "May we come in for a moment? It's a rather unusual story and we'd like to explain properly." After a brief pause, their mother reluctantly stepped aside, allowing the men to enter. The twins sat stiffly on the couch, their hands clasped tightly together, while their mother perched on the edge of a chair, her gaze wary. Mr. Carter took a seat across from them, placing the briefcase gently on the coffee table. He opened it to reveal neatly stacked documents and photographs. "Let us start from the beginning," he said, pulling out a photo. It showed the twins sitting on the steps outside their building, handing a sandwich to the homeless man. This image was captured by someone who happened to be passing by. It caught the attention of our client, a very generous individual who believes in rewarding acts of kindness. The room fell silent. Lily and Rose stared at the photo, their faces flushing with embarrassment. They hadn't realized anyone was watching them that day. Their mother leaned forward, studying the picture intently. "So you're saying, because they shared a sandwich with a stranger, someone wants to help us?" "That's correct," Mr. Carter confirmed. "Our client has instructed us to offer your family assistance, financial support, educational opportunities for the girls, and even help with securing better living arrangements. All they ask in return is that you continue to spread kindness wherever you can." The weight of his words sank in slowly. Tears welled up in the twins' mother's eyes as she processed what she was hearing. For years, she had fought tirelessly to keep her family afloat, often feeling like the odds were insurmountable. Now, out of nowhere, hope had arrived in the form of 3 black SUVs and 2 men in suits. "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would someone do this for us?" Mr. Hayes spoke up, his tone warm and sincere. "Because sometimes, the smallest acts of compassion can have the biggest impact. Your daughters reminded our client of the goodness that exists in the world, and they wanted to honor that." For a long moment, no one spoke. The twins clung to each other, overwhelmed by the turn of events. Their mother wiped her tears and took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you so much." As the men gathered their things and prepared to leave, Mr. Carter handed the twins' mother a folder containing all the details of the assistance they would receive. "You'll hear from us soon," he assured her. "And please, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions." When the SUVs drove away, the neighborhood returned to its usual quiet. But inside the tiny apartment, the atmosphere had changed completely. The twins hugged their mother tightly, unable to believe what had just happened. Life as they knew it was about to transform, and it all began with a simple act of kindness. The following week felt like a dream for Lily, Rose, and their mother. Everything was happening so quickly that it was hard to keep up. The men in suits had left behind a folder filled with documents outlining the assistance their family would receive. There were plans for a new home, scholarships for the twins, and even job training programs for their mother. It all sounded too good to be true, but as the days passed, the promises began to take shape. One afternoon, the twins' mother received a call from Mr. Carter, inviting them to visit Ezekiel Grant's estate. "It's just a formality," he explained over the phone. "Mr. Grant wants to meet you personally and ensure everything is proceeding smoothly." Though she was hesitant at first, this entire situation still felt surreal. She agreed. After all, they owed it to the man who had orchestrated this incredible change in their lives. On the day of the visit, the family dressed in their best clothes. For the twins, this meant wearing their school uniforms freshly ironed by their mother. She herself wore a simple yet elegant dress she hadn't worn in years. As they stepped outside, a sleek black car waited for them, a stark contrast to the battered bus stops and dusty sidewalks they were used to. A driver greeted them warmly and opened the door, ushering them inside. The drive to Ezekiel Grant's estate was breathtaking. The twins pressed their faces against the window, marveling At the lush greenery and sprawling fields they passed along the way, they had never seen anything like it before. Their town was gray and gritty, but here, everything seemed alive with color and light. When they finally arrived, the sight of the mansion took their breath away. It was enormous, with tall white columns framing the entrance and perfectly manicured gardens stretching out on either side. Ezekiel Grant himself greeted them at the door. He was an older man with sharp features, piercing blue eyes, and a warm smile that immediately put them at ease. Despite his wealth and status, there was something humble about him, a sense of genuine kindness that made the family feel welcome. "Come in, he said, ushering them into a grand sitting room where tea and biscuits awaited. As they settled into plush armchairs, Ezekiel began to explain his role in the network that had changed their lives. "You see," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I'm part of an organization dedicated to finding and uplifting individuals who demonstrate extraordinary compassion. We believe that acts of kindness, no matter how small, have the power to transform not only the lives of those involved but also the world around us." He paused, studying the twins' faces. "Your act of sharing your last sandwich didn't go unnoticed. You see, the homeless man you helped, he's one of our operatives. We place people like him in situations where they can identify others who are truly selfless. And when we found out what you did..." He smiled again, his eyes twinkling. "Well, let's just say it confirmed everything we hoped to find." The twins exchanged astonished glances. They had no idea their simple gesture had been part of such a larger plan. "But why?" Rose asked timidly. "Why go through all this trouble just because we gave someone a sandwich?" Ezekiel chuckled softly. "Because the world needs more people like you," he replied. "People who choose kindness without expecting anything in return. Too often we focus on what divides us instead of what brings us together. Acts like yours remind us of our shared humanity. That's why my organization exists, to reward and amplify those moments of goodness." Their mother listened intently, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "But why us?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "There must be so many other families who need help." "You're absolutely right," Ezekiel admitted. "There are countless families struggling, every day. But your daughters stood out because of their willingness to give even when they had so little themselves. That kind of selflessness is rare and incredibly powerful. By helping you, we hope to inspire others to follow your example." Over the next hour, Ezekiel walked them through the details of the support they would receive. The new home was already being prepared, a cozy suburban house with enough space for the family to live comfortably. Scholarships would cover the twins' education, ensuring they could pursue their dreams without financial burdens. And for their mother, there were opportunities to learn new skills that would lead to better-paying jobs. As the conversation drew to a close, Ezekiel handed them a thick envelope containing additional information. "This is just the beginning," he assured them. "We'll stay in touch to make sure everything goes smoothly. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." By the time they left the estate, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the countryside. The twins sat quietly in the car, processing everything they had learned. Their mother stared out the window, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope, not just for herself, but for her daughters' futures. When they returned home, the reality of their situation began to sink in. Neighbors stopped by to congratulate them, having heard rumors about the mysterious visitors in black SUVs. Some were skeptical, while others were genuinely happy for the family. But amidst the chatter, one thing was clear. The twins' act of kindness had sparked something far greater than anyone could have imagined. That night, as they lay in bed, Lily turned to her sister. "Do you think this is real?" she whispered. "Like, do you think it's really going to change everything?" Rose thought for a moment before replying. "I don't know, but even if it doesn't, we still did the right thing, and maybe that's enough." Lily smiled faintly. "Yeah," she agreed. "Maybe it is." Little did they know, the changes were only beginning. What started as a single moment of generosity was about to ripple outward, touching not only their lives but the lives of countless others. The twins had unknowingly become part of something much bigger than themselves, a movement fueled by the belief that kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change the world. Months passed, and the twins' lives transformed in ways they could never have imagined. The small, worn-down apartment they once called home was now a distant memory. They had moved into a cozy suburban house with a backyard big enough for them to play and dream. The garden became their favorite spot, where they planted flowers and vegetables, learning how to nurture life just as they had nurtured hope during their toughest days. Their mother, too, found a new lease on life, with the job training provided. By Ezekiel's organization, she secured steady work at a local community center. Her role involved helping other struggling families navigate difficult times, a task she approached with empathy and determination. For the first time in years, she felt proud of what she was doing, knowing her efforts made a difference not only for her own family, but also for others in similar situations. For Lily and Rose, school became an exciting journey rather than a daily struggle. Thanks to the scholarships, they were able to focus entirely on their studies without worrying about money or supplies. Both girls excelled academically, fueled by dreams that seemed within reach for the first time. Lily wanted to become a doctor, inspired by the kindness shown to their family when they needed it most. She envisioned herself healing people, giving back to the world the way others had given to her. Rose, meanwhile, dreamed of becoming a psychologist. She understood firsthand how hard life could be, and she wanted to help people find strength in their darkest moments. But perhaps the most profound change wasn't material, it was emotional. The family had gone from surviving to thriving, and the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. They celebrated small victories together, a good grade on a test, a promotion at work, or even the simple joy of sitting around the dinner table sharing stories. These moments reminded them of how far they'd come and how much they still had to look forward to. Ezekiel stayed in touch, occasionally visiting to check on their progress. During one such visit, he brought along a photo album filled with pictures of the twins' journey, from their humble beginnings to their current successes. "This is proof," he said, flipping through the pages. "Proof that kindness can create ripples far beyond what we expect." The twins flipped through the album, marveling at how different their lives looked now. One picture showed them sitting on the cracked steps of their old apartment, smiling despite everything. Another captured the moment they handed the sandwich to the homeless man. There were newer photos, too, of their new home, their mother at her job, and the twins proudly holding report cards covered in A's. Each image told a story of resilience, hope, and transformation. As they sat together in the living room, Ezekiel shared another revelation. "You know," he began, his voice warm, "your story has inspired others. People across the country have heard about your act of kindness and the chain reaction it set off. Some have started donating to charities, while others are volunteering in their communities. You've sparked something remarkable." The twins exchanged astonished glances. They had never thought of themselves as role models, let alone catalysts for change. But hearing Ezekiel's words filled them with pride and responsibility. If their actions could inspire others, then they owed it to the world to keep spreading kindness wherever they went. That evening, after Ezekiel left, the family gathered in the backyard to watch the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, casting a golden glow over the garden they had worked so hard to cultivate. Lily turned to Rose and smiled. "Do you remember when we worried about tomorrow?" she asked softly. Rose nodded, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "Yeah. Back then, everything felt impossible." "And now?" Lily prompted, her tone teasing but curious. "Now?" Rose paused, looking around at their home, their garden, and their mother standing nearby. "Now I feel like anything is possible." Their mother joined them, wrapping her arms around her daughters. "You two remind me every day that goodness exists in the world," she said, her voice thick with emotion. No matter how tough things get, there's always hope, if we choose to be kind. Weeks turned into months and the twins continued to thrive. Their story spread further, featured in newspapers and online articles. People wrote letters thanking them for reminding humanity of its potential for compassion. Schools invited them to speak about their experiences, and though they were initially nervous, they soon realized how powerful their message was. Sometimes all it takes is one small act of kindness to make a big difference, Lily would say during these talks, her words resonating deeply with audiences. Years later, as adults, Lily and Rose fulfilled their dreams. Lily became a renowned pediatrician, known not just for her medical skills but also for her unwavering care for her patients. Rose opened a counseling center focused on helping children and teenagers overcome trauma. Together, they founded a foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged families, ensuring that no child grew up feeling forgotten or hopeless. Through it all, they never forgot the homeless man who had changed their lives, or the mysterious network that had recognized their kindness. Though they never saw him again, they often wondered about him, hoping he was safe and happy wherever he was. Occasionally, they received updates from Ezekiel, who assured them that the man was doing well and continuing his work as part of the organization. One crisp autumn afternoon, many years after that fateful day, the twins stood side by side in the backyard of their childhood home, the same place where they had once dreamed of a better future. Now, surrounded by laughter and love, they reflected on how far they'd come. Life hadn't been easy, but it had taught them invaluable lessons about resilience, gratitude, and the power of kindness. You know, Lily said, breaking the silence, I think we owe it all to that sandwich. Rose laughed, her eyes sparkling, and to us for sharing it. They hugged tightly, grateful for the journey they had taken together. It had been long and challenging, but every step had been worth it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows over the garden they had nurtured, the twins knew one thing for certain. Their act of kindness had not only changed their lives, it had touched countless others, proving that even the smallest gestures can leave the biggest impact.